Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Sean. On this channel, I talk about finance, my personal finance, and my journey to financial freedom. We talk about investing and how to use your money. If you're interested in that, please consider subscribing, of course. I'm super stoked about today because I'm not gonna be doing any kind of stock analysis. I'm just gonna be talking about a company that I've grown to really love, and that is Airbnb. The reason we're talking about Airbnb is that a couple of weeks ago, they filed for an IPO, an initial public offering. So there's a chance here that we are gonna be able to own some shares of Airbnb. But first though, if you guys aren't aware of what Airbnb is, it's essentially a website slash app that lets you rent out a room or a property to someone else. It's got a very simple user interface and allows you to do rentals that are both short-term and long-term, which is helpful if you're a landlord, or short-term if you just have like a guest house or a room that you want to use and make a little bit of extra side cash. So it's really good there. It links you to services that helps you get photos done of your place. It helps you find ways to manage the property, get it cleaned, etc. So it's really good for managing the property itself. But really, I've become a big fan of just using it as a customer. I've used this in multiple trips. I've never had an issue getting into the apartment. I've been able to stay in a lot of really cool condos and apartments that I otherwise wouldn't be allowed to stay in. But the best part of this whole thing is that sometimes I get to meet the people who own the property. We talk about property management. They give you some tips about where to go and what to do in the city that you're staying in. So it's got a lot of really good things going for it and really enriches your traveling experience. And the one thing I like to do more than talk about money and stocks is travel, which, we're not doing too much of right now. So let's talk about the IPO. Now, earlier this year, Airbnb was spending a lot of money on marketing, trying to build up its reputation and get its name out there because it was planning on doing an IPO in 2020. However, what it was planning on doing was something called a direct listing. And in a direct listing, they don't give a part of the company to let the public buy. What they essentially do is let the public pick the price of the stock, but a big part of this would have been that those people who worked at Airbnb, who owned shares and invested early, would have a chance to cash out what they own of the company. Now, I'll talk a little bit about what that means. I don't know if you've ever worked at a startup, but a lot of startups will offer you stocks as a form of compensation that you hold on to. And if you work at the company long enough and the company takes off, those stocks can be worth a lot of money. Well, a lot of people have started at Airbnb. They've been around since 2008, and a lot of these people have been holding on to stocks and they really want to get the cash for them. This would allow those people to do just that. And at the time earlier this year, Airbnb was valued at $31 billion, which is a pretty crazy evaluation. They have a very low overhead and they have tons of cash actually in the bank. We'll talk about that in a bit. So originally what this was Brian Chesky, who is the founder of Airbnb, letting his employees and investors kind of have a way to cash out here. Then Corona happened and revenue dropped dramatically. So the company went from being evaluated at $31 billion to $18 billion. That's right, I said only $18 billion. But Brian has now rethought the IPO and is going to go with a traditional IPO for two reasons. One, it still lets his investors and employees cash out. However, two, it allows him to raise funds for the company, which I think he's sort of thinking he needs now. By the way, if you guys are interested in the story of how Airbnb started, I listened to a podcast called How I Built This by NPR. One of my favorite podcasts. Brian Chesky is on there. He talks about Airbnb. You can find it anywhere you listen to your podcast normally. Now, before I get into why this IPO is important for you and I as investors, just a quick reminder to like and subscribe to this channel to help the channel get to more people. Also, if you're interested in investing and you live in Canada, I have a link in the description with Questrade to get you a deal on opening an account and get you some free money to start investing with. So please be sure to check that out. Okay, so we've established the situation that Airbnb is in right now. So what does it mean for you and I? So typically a company doesn't try to IPO when there are rough economic times. You will see if you do your research that typically companies love it when the economy is growing and everything's good because people will be willing to invest and pay a little bit more to get in on companies early. However, that hasn't changed for Airbnb. If Airbnb is looking to raise money, this is actually really good for you and I because they will have a fair evaluation and probably come in at a fair price for their stock. So I'm just gonna go over three things that I think are key as to why I'm really bullish about Airbnb. And then we're gonna go over some of the challenges for Airbnb and how I think they can navigate them. So here we go. So first thing that is really working in Airbnb's favor is lots of people have heard of this brand. I've heard of this brand, I've used this brand, my parents have used this brand. So that means that it really is an easy to use interface, and they've really thought out how to make this work for a lot of people. Now, it's a very common question when someone goes on vacation is go, oh, did you stay in a hotel or an Airbnb? And just hearing people say that means like this really provides a good alternative to the traditional hotel. Second really good thing about Airbnb is they have got $2 billion worth of cash. And as we've discussed, cash is what gets you through rough economic times. It is the key to weathering these storms, and Airbnb has a lot of it. They will definitely be there when this is all over. Third really good thing is that it has already been profitable since 2017. This is actually a really good thing when you've compared it to other tech companies such as Uber that was never really popular but ended up going public anyway. And then, I don't know, it ends up being pretty volatile. I wasn't a big fan of going in on Uber because it wasn't profitable, but I know when Airbnb has their IPO, they have a business model that works and they're able to make money. That's pretty good. Note that the only year that it wasn't profitable was 2019 because it was spending a lot of money on marketing, getting prepared for this IPO. One more thing that I think is worth mentioning is that I really look at Airbnb as a disruptor in this industry. I've heard it said on a couple of the other articles and channels that it's kind of got a similar feel of Tesla, and I get that. I think it's got a very disruptive nature about it. It's kind of this annoying new person that a very old traditional hotel industry kind of has to deal with, and they don't really know how to deal with it. So that's really exciting to me. I think it'll do really well being the first really polished service like this that's really kind of got the formula down to let people make a little bit of side money, give customers an option other than hotels, and offer an experience that hotels just don't really do. Okay, so what about some of the challenges for Airbnb? Well, obviously there's this whole thing with COVID going on. Is it going to suffer? Well, Expedia and other kind of competitors, we have seen their stocks decline and not really recover fully yet. But Airbnb has something going for it in that it also does long-term rentals, which I think gives it an alternative and another source of income, because I don't think those have been really as affected by COVID as the short-term rentals. And I say that as a landlord. I thought that I was gonna have trouble renting out the old condo that I used to live in, but I had to get a new tenant during COVID. It didn't really pose too much of a problem. So there's that going for Airbnb. The other thing I sort of wonder about this point is, was it really that bad for Airbnb? I mean, sure, people couldn't fly and rent a condo in another city, but a lot of people this summer have driven to nearby tourist destinations, stayed in Airbnbs that are nearby. So did it really hurt Airbnb all that much? Probably not as bad as people think. In fact, if you look at it, Airbnb has already started to rebound, and it's not as bleak of a summer as people were thinking. Now, there's another thing that I know Airbnb has kind of been challenged with, and that is some of the limitations placed on them because they have been so disruptive. Some areas that use Airbnb are limiting them to only let you rent out suites or rooms when you live in a property. So how this is different is sometimes you are able to own, let's say, 20 properties and use Airbnb to rent them all out, but you only live in one of those properties. What some of these cities are now doing is making Airbnb only allowed if you own 2 bedrooms or more and you live in one of the bedrooms and you're just renting out one of the other rooms. That probably poses a bit of a challenge more to landlords and landlords who have a lot of properties than Airbnb itself, but it's worth noting that it's a hurdle or something that Airbnb needs to comply with, and it could potentially lose out on being used on a bunch of properties if landlords have it set up that way. Very recently, because a lot of young folks have been using Airbnbs to set up parties in the absence of nightclubs, Airbnb had to send out a note to say not to use the properties in such a way and to respect the landlord's property as a customer when you use it. I think this is kind of a temporary side effect or symptom of the whole pandemic. But what I think is cool about this is that young people use the app and they're very familiar with this company. And after this whole thing blows over, we know that this next generation of people are going to be using Airbnb as a go-to for when they plan their trips and vacations. So as you can tell, I'm really bullish about this company. I think no matter what, Airbnb is going to do very well. I'm saving up a bit of cash to get in on this company when they do become public, but it does have a lot of things going for it. It's got the ability to do short-term and long-term rentals. It's already kind of rebounding from the illness that we have right now. It's a big disruptor, and even some of the challenges that it has, I'm pretty confident they will be able to navigate through and be successful. So yeah, I really like Airbnb as a customer, and I think I will be jumping on this one when it gets released, so I'll be keeping an eye out for that. What are you guys doing for this IPO? Are you excited about it? Have you heard about it? Will you be watching, or are you already getting your cash together to buy some of this? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think of Airbnb. Is it gonna be successful or a total flop? Let me know what you think. Until next time, guys, have a great week, spread the wealth, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.